The city sparkled under the crisp winter night, a dazzling web of lights that stretched endlessly into the horizon. Downtown Los Angeles was alive with New Year's Eve excitement, each corner buzzing with the promise of celebration. Inside Orem, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, the air hummed with laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. Guests adorned in designer gowns and tailored suits filled the space, their conversations blending into a symphony of affluence. Emily Parker adjusted her black apron, smoothing the creases with practiced precision. At 24, she had become accustomed to nights like this, serving tables while the rest of the world celebrated. Orem was where the elite rang in the new year, and for Emily, it was a steady paycheck in an increasingly unsteady life. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she didn't need to check to know it was another reminder about her overdue rent. Her landlord's messages were a regular fixture now, each one more urgent than the last. To make matters worse, her car had broken down earlier that week, forcing her to rely on buses and borrowed rides to get anywhere. And then there were her nursing classes, her ticket to a better future, if only she could juggle the mounting pressures of tuition, work, and life. The restaurant's gleaming interior was a stark contrast to her reality. Chandeliers cast a soft, golden glow over white linen-covered tables, adorned with fresh flowers and flickering candles. The guests drank champagne and traded stories about vacation homes and private jets, a world so far removed from Emily's that it felt surreal. "Table 6 is asking for another bottle of Dom," a coworker whispered as she passed by, balancing a tray laden with hors d'oeuvres. Emily nodded and forced a smile. On it. She moved with practiced grace, weaving between tables and dodging conversations that she was never meant to join. Her customers would see only her service, not the weight of the world she carried on her shoulders. But she had mastered this skill, the art of appearing cheerful even when her mind was a whirlwind of worry. Tonight, she told herself, would be no different. She needed to get through this shift, collect her tips, and start the new year with at least a fraction of hope. As the countdown to midnight loomed, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for the long hours ahead. The restaurant's doors swung open, letting in a brief gust of chilly air that mingled with the warm, fragrant ambiance. Emily glanced up from the tray she was organizing and noticed a man stepping inside. He was tall, unassuming, and dressed in a plain gray hoodie and jeans, a stark contrast to the polished perfection that surrounded him. He carried himself with quiet ease, his demeanor calm yet confident, as though he was used to moving unnoticed in rooms like this. The hostess greeted him, her smile flickering with the hesitation of someone deciding how to handle an anomaly. After a brief exchange, she gestured toward the dining area and led him to a small table near the window. Emily's heart sank when she noticed his seat assignment, her section. "Looks like you've got table 9, a coworker said with a sly grin. "Mystery man. He doesn't exactly scream Orem material, does he?" Emily ignored the comment, grabbing a menu and approaching the table with her practiced smile. As she neared, she noticed how the man's face remained partially obscured by the hood of his sweatshirt. His features, though largely unremarkable, carried a certain sharpness that hinted at familiarity. But she couldn't quite place him. "Good evening," she said warmly, setting the menu down. "Welcome to Orem. My name is Emily, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." The man looked up, meeting her gaze with a polite smile. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice quiet but clear. He didn't fumble with his words or avoid eye contact, but there was an understated humility in the way he spoke. Emily took note of his water preference, room temperature, no ice, and retreated to fetch it, wondering briefly why someone so casual had chosen this particular spot for New Year's Eve. Back at the server station, the whispers began. "Did you see the guy at table 9? One coworker murmured. "Yeah, who shows up here looking like that?" Another replied. Emily bit her tongue, focusing instead on preparing his water. To her, he was just another customer, albeit one who didn't quite fit the restaurant's typical mold. When she returned, the man was studying the menu, seemingly unbothered by the stares from other diners. "Have you decided on anything yet?" she asked, maintaining her warm tone. He glanced up again, meeting her eyes. "Not yet," he said. "But thanks, Emily." Something about the way he said her name caught her off guard. It wasn't forced or dismissive. It was deliberate, almost kind. Shaking off the thought, she gave him a brief nod and stepped away, leaving him to browse the menu. As the evening unfolded, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her quiet, hoodie-clad guest than met the eye. But for now, he was just another table, and she had a busy night ahead. Emily returned to the table with a small notepad in hand, prepared to take her guest's order. The man looked up from the menu, his relaxed expression free of the urgency or demands she often encountered with other patrons. "Have you decided?" she asked, her tone cheerful but professional. He smiled, closing the menu and sliding it toward her. "I'll go with the salmon," he said simply, "and maybe a glass of red wine, whatever you recommend." Emily nodded, jotting it down. "Good choice. Our salmon is excellent, and for the wine, I'd recommend the Merlot. It pairs really well." "I'll trust your judgment," he said, his voice steady and calm. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "By the way, I'm Elon." The name didn't register immediately. She'd heard it before, of course, but the connection between the man in front of her and the global tech icon didn't click. To her, he was just a polite customer with a low-key presence. "Nice to meet you, Elon," she replied, giving him a friendly smile. "I'm Emily." She scribbled the last note on her pad and started to turn away, but his next question caught her off guard. "So, Emily," he began, leaning back slightly in his chair, "what's your New Year's Eve like? Busy night for you, I imagine." Emily hesitated, unsure how much to share. She wasn't used to customers asking about her life. They were usually more focused on their own evening. "It's definitely a hectic one," she said carefully, "but I'm used to it. Working here keeps me on my toes." "Is this what you've always wanted to do?" he asked, his tone light, but genuinely curious. Emily chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Not exactly. I'm actually in nursing school. This is just something I do to make ends meet for now." "Impressive," Elon said, his eyes narrowing slightly as if in thought. "Balancing work and school can't be easy." "It's not," Emily admitted, her guard dropping slightly. "But it's worth it. Nursing is what I've wanted to do for as long as I can remember. Helping people, it just feels right." As she spoke, she caught herself opening up more than she intended. It wasn't like her to share personal struggles with strangers, especially in the middle of a shift. But something about Elon's presence was disarming. He wasn't pressing or prying, just listening. "What about tonight?" he asked. "No big celebrations for you?" Emily shrugged. "Not really. I can't afford to take the night off, and even if I could, it's not like I'd have time for a party. Bills don't exactly wait for the new year." There it was. Too much. She bit her lip, feeling the sting of oversharing, but Elon didn't react with pity or judgment. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully, his gaze steady but kind. "Well," he said after a moment, "I think you've got a good head on your shoulders. Nursing school and working a night like this, that's no small feat." His words caught her off guard, and for the first time that night, Emily felt a flicker of validation. "Thanks," she said softly. "I appreciate that." As Emily walked back to the kitchen to place Elon's order, the murmurs among the staff began to grow louder. "Did you see table 9? One server whispered to another, glancing toward Elon's seat. "I think that's Elon Musk," said another, their voice low but tinged with excitement. "I saw a picture of him once in an article. Same face, same haircut." Emily overheard the exchange and paused mid-step. She glanced back toward her table. The man sitting there, Elon, didn't seem to notice the commotion he was causing. He sipped his water casually, his demeanor calm and collected. It was hard to reconcile the idea that someone so unassuming could be one of the world's most famous entrepreneurs. "Come on," Emily said to the group, rolling her eyes slightly. "There's no way. He's too low-key for that." "Think about it," another server urged. "Who else would wear a hoodie in here and get away with it?" Emily laughed, shaking her head. "I think you're all reading too much into this." Still, the idea lingered as she carried his wine and entree to the table. When she set the plate down, Elon glanced up with that same steady smile. "Thanks, Emily." "You're welcome," she said, trying not to let the speculation distract her. "Let me know if there's anything else you need." As she walked away, her co-workers exchanged knowing glances, clearly convinced they were right. Emily, however, chose to brush it off. Famous or not, Elon had been polite and easy to serve, and that was all that mattered to her. But as the evening wore on, she couldn't help but notice how the man seemed unfazed by the growing attention. He kept to himself, occasionally looking up to observe the room, but never reacting to the whispers or stares. It was as if he was accustomed to it, the scrutiny rolling off his shoulders like water. And then there was the way he listened, the way he'd shown genuine interest in her life earlier. It wasn't the kind of exchange she expected from a customer, let alone someone of extraordinary status. Still, Emily shook her head, dismissing the idea. Whether he was Elon Musk or just a quiet diner enjoying his New Year's Eve meal, it didn't change how she treated him. To her, he was just another table, one she intended to serve with the same kindness and care as anyone else. The hum of the restaurant was as lively as ever, with laughter and the clinking of glasses filling the air. Emily was busy tending to another table when she noticed the restaurant manager, Mr. Carter, making his way toward Elon's table. His stride was brisk, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor, and his expression carried the telltale mix of excitement and nerves. Emily's stomach sank. She knew that look. It meant Mr. Carter had recognized someone important. Elon had just finished his entree, the neatly cleared plate sitting before him. He looked up as Mr. Carter approached, his relaxed demeanor unchanging. "Good evening, sir," Mr. Carter began, his voice carrying an air of practiced politeness. "I trust everything has been to your satisfaction tonight?" Elon nodded. "Yes, thank you. Everything's been great." "I'm glad to hear it," Mr. Carter replied, his smile widening. "I couldn't help but notice. Are you Mr. Musk, Elon Musk?" Emily, now clearing a nearby table, winced slightly. Oh no, she thought. She'd hoped her manager wouldn't catch wind of the whispers floating among the staff. Elon's expression didn't shift. "That's right," he said, his tone casual. Mr. Carter's grin grew wider, almost comically so. "Well, it's an honor to have you dining with us tonight. Please, if there's anything at all we can do to make your evening more enjoyable, don't hesitate to let us know." He gestured toward the kitchen. "In fact, we have a few off-menu items that might interest you. Truffle risotto, Wagyu steak, perhaps a special dessert pairing?" Emily caught Elon's subtle sigh, though he masked it well. He glanced toward her briefly before responding. "That's very kind of you, but I'm all set. Emily's been taking excellent care of me." Mr. Carter's enthusiasm faltered for just a moment, but he quickly recovered. Of course. Well, if you change your mind, just let me know." Elon nodded politely, signaling the conversation's end. Mr. Carter hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave, but finally stepped back. As he walked away, he shot Emily a pointed look, silently urging her to continue giving the table extra attention. Emily returned to Elon's table to clear his plate. "Sorry about that," she said quietly, a faint smile on her lips. "Nothing to apologize for," Elon replied. "You're doing great." The simple compliment carried a weight that left Emily momentarily speechless. She nodded, her cheeks warming slightly, and turned back to the server station, determined to focus on her work. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that this interaction, so seemingly ordinary, was anything but. The clock was ticking closer to midnight, and the restaurant buzzed with the energy of celebration. Patrons were ordering champagne, snapping selfies, and making plans for the countdown. Emily darted from table to table, her tray laden with sparkling flutes and desserts, her steps quick but steady. At Elon's table, the atmosphere was far quieter. He sat with his glass of Merlot, seemingly content to observe the festivities around him rather than actively participate. Emily passed by, noting how relaxed he seemed compared to the increasingly exuberant crowd. As the countdown began, 10, 9, 8, Emily found herself back at Elon's table, dropping off a fresh glass of water. He glanced up at her and raised his glass slightly, his lips curving into a faint smile. "Happy New Year, Emily," he said, his tone warm and genuine. "Happy New Year," she replied, the chaos of the countdown fading for a moment as their eyes met. 3, 2, 1. The restaurant erupted in cheers, champagne corks popping and laughter filling the air. Emily allowed herself a brief pause, soaking in the jubilant atmosphere before hurrying to another table. When she returned to Elon's table a few minutes later, he was waiting with a folded napkin in hand. "Could I get the check, please?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying an unspoken weight. "Of course," Emily said, reaching for the napkin. But as her fingers brushed it, she realized he wasn't handing it over as part of the check. It was separate. "I'll leave this with you," he said, offering her a small smile. Emily nodded, her curiosity piqued, but she didn't unfold the napkin immediately. Instead, she focused on retrieving his bill, processing it quickly and efficiently. Elon signed the receipt with the same understated confidence he'd shown all evening, then stood, offering her a polite nod as he adjusted his hoodie. "Thank you for everything," he said simply. "You're welcome," Emily replied, her voice steady despite the growing questions in her mind. Elon left quietly, slipping out of the restaurant as unobtrusively as he'd entered. Emily watched him go, the folded napkin still tucked into her apron pocket. For a moment, she debated opening it right there, but the demands of the restaurant pulled her back to reality. As she cleared his table, she couldn't help but wonder about the man she'd just served. He was nothing like the customers she usually encountered. He had listened, asked questions, and treated her with respect. But what had he left behind in that folded napkin? Emily wouldn't find out until later, but she already knew it would be something she'd never forget. The restaurant's noise had begun to quiet as the New Year's celebrations waned. Emily moved methodically, clearing dishes and resetting tables, while her thoughts lingered on Elon's departure. His calm demeanor and polite manner had left an impression on her, but she chalked it up to nothing more than a pleasant interaction. Reaching his table, she noticed the signed receipt neatly placed on the edge. But just beneath it was something else, a folded napkin. She tilted her head curiously as she picked it up, feeling the faint weight of paper inside. Setting her tray down, she unfolded the napkin carefully, revealing a handwritten note. Her breath caught as she read the elegant script. "Emily, your story and perseverance are inspiring. Never lose your drive. Our world needs more people like you." For a moment she simply stared, her eyes scanning the words over and over. Beneath the note, something else caught her eye. A slip of paper folded neatly in half. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a check made out to her name. The amount printed on it sent a jolt through her. $50,000. Emily's knees wobbled, and she gripped the edge of the table for support. "This can't be real," she whispered to herself, her heart pounding in her chest. She glanced around the restaurant, half expecting someone to tell her it was all a mistake, a cruel joke. But no one was watching. This moment was hers alone. The magnitude of the gesture began to sink in. The man she had served with no airs or expectations, the one her co-workers had whispered about, had left her something that could change her life. A lump formed in her throat, as tears welled in her eyes. The note and the check remained clutched in her trembling hands as she stood frozen, the noise of the restaurant fading into a distant hum. Elon Musk, the Elon Musk, had not only listened to her struggles, but had acted with kindness beyond anything she could have imagined. Emily's shock gave way to a torrent of emotion. The tears she had been holding back spilled freely as she clutched the note and check to her chest. Her vision blurred, and she let out a soft, incredulous laugh, unable to process the enormity of what had just happened. One of her co-workers, a fellow waitress named Mia, noticed Emily's trembling form. "Emily, are you okay?" Mia asked, concern etched across her face. Unable to speak, Emily simply held out the check and the note. Mia's eyes widened as she read them, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Emily," she whispered. "Is this real?" The commotion drew more staff over, including the skeptical manager, Mr. Carter. They crowded around, reading the note and seeing the check, their faces shifting from curiosity to astonishment. What is this?" Mr. Carter stammered, his usual composure shattered. "It's from him," Emily managed to say, her voice cracking with emotion. "Elon Musk. He left this for me." The name sent a ripple of recognition through the group. The whispers and suspicions from earlier now carried the weight of confirmation. Mr. Carter took a step back, his expression a mix of disbelief and guilt. I can't believe this," he said, his voice quieter than usual. Mia hugged Emily tightly, her voice breaking with joy. "Emily, do you realize what this means? This is life-changing." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. She thought of her broken-down car, the overdue rent, and the endless stress of juggling work and school. In an instant, all those burdens felt lighter, as if the universe had decided to give her a reprieve. The staff exchanged murmurs of awe and excitement, their earlier skepticism replaced with genuine admiration for what had unfolded. Even Mr. Carter, who prided himself on his professionalism, looked shaken, his earlier eagerness to impress Elon now overshadowed by Emily's moment of validation. Emily wiped her tears and took a deep breath, clutching the note like a lifeline. "I don't even know what to say," she said, her voice still trembling. "You don't have to say anything," Mia replied. "You've earned this. He saw something in you, Emily, and he's right. The world needs more people like you." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. As the restaurant buzzed with renewed energy, she realized that this was more than just a generous gesture. It was a turning point, a reminder that her struggles and determination hadn't gone unnoticed. In that moment, surrounded by her co-workers, Emily felt a profound sense of hope for the first time in a long time. The note and check were tangible proof that kindness and resilience mattered, and that sometimes, even in the most unexpected circumstances, the universe had a way of recognizing those who refused to give up. By the next morning, Aurum was at the center of an unexpected media storm. Guests who had been present the previous night had begun sharing the story on social media, their posts quickly gaining traction. Grainy photos of Elon Musk sitting quietly at table 9 accompanied captions like, "Elon Musk surprises waitress with $50,000 tip on New Year's Eve, proof that kindness matters." One particularly viral post read, "I was at the same restaurant as Elon Musk last night. He left a note and a $50K check for the waitress after hearing her story. What a way to start the new year." Within hours, news outlets picked up the story, and Emily's name was soon trending online. The small personal moment she had shared with Elon now resonated far beyond the restaurant's walls, sparking conversations about generosity, gratitude, and the ripple effects of kindness. Emily, who had returned to the restaurant that morning to retrieve her belongings, was caught off guard by the attention. Reporters had already begun gathering outside, their cameras poised and questions ready. She hesitated at the sight of them, unsure how to navigate this sudden spotlight. Inside, Her coworkers buzzed with excitement. Mia rushed over the moment she saw her. "Emily, it's everywhere. People are talking about you, about him. Can you believe this?" Emily shook her head, still dazed. "It doesn't feel real," she admitted. "I never thought something like this would happen, especially not to me." She found herself reflecting on the interaction, replaying each moment in her mind. Elon hadn't treated her like someone desperate for charity or pity. He had listened to her story without judgment, valuing her kindness and resilience instead of her circumstances. That realization hit Emily deeply. She hadn't recognized Elon Musk as a billionaire or tech mogul. She had simply treated him like she would any other customer, with sincerity and care. And in turn, he had seen her for who she truly was. The weight of that understanding settled over her, filling her with equal parts gratitude and responsibility. I hope I can live up to what he saw in me," she said softly to Mia. "You already have," Mia replied, squeezing her arm. "And now the world knows it too." The first rays of the New Year's sun broke over the city, casting a golden glow across the skyline. For Emily, the dawn of the new year felt more profound than ever before. It wasn't just a fresh start. It was a turning point. Sitting at her small kitchen table, she spread out a stack of bills she'd been avoiding for weeks. For the first time in months, she didn't feel the crushing anxiety of not knowing how she'd make ends meet. The check from Elon Musk, now safely deposited, had wiped out her overdue rent, covered the repair costs for her car, and allowed her to pay down a significant portion of her tuition. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could breathe. The note, however, remained her most cherished possession. It sat framed on her desk, the words serving as a constant reminder of her worth and the kindness she had received. "Never lose your drive. Our world needs more people like you." She read it every morning, the simple message anchoring her as she navigated her newfound opportunities. With her financial burdens eased, Emily found herself able to focus more on her nursing studies. She enrolled in extra classes, finally able to afford the textbooks and resources she'd once had to scrape together for. Her dream of becoming a nurse, which had always felt just out of reach, now seemed closer than ever. Months later, Emily found herself back at the restaurant for another shift. Though her future had brightened considerably, she continued working at Aurum for the time being, grateful for the stability it had provided during her hardest times. As she moved between tables, she carried herself with renewed confidence, her steps lighter and her smile easier. At one table, a couple was deep in conversation about the news story that had put Aurum on the map. "Did you hear about the waitress who served Elon Musk?" the woman whispered. "What a life-changing moment." Emily caught snippets of their words as she passed by, but didn't stop to correct them. She didn't feel the need to broadcast her role in the story. Instead, she focused on the task at hand, serving the customers before her with the same kindness and care that had brought her here in the first place. Toward the end of her shift, a family of 4 sat down at one of her tables. The parents smiled warmly, and their young daughter looked up at Emily with wide eyes. "You're really nice," the girl said shyly as Emily set down their menus. Emily's heart swelled, and she knelt slightly to meet the girl's gaze. "Thank you," she said softly. "Being kind is the most important thing you can do." As she stood and moved to another table, Emily felt the weight of Elon's note in her pocket, a silent companion to her journey. The new year had brought more than just a financial gift. It had given her clarity, hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. And as she continued to serve, study, and dream, she carried the lessons of that night with her, forever etched into her heart. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even crazier.